I think I may have invented some uncommonly common cinnamon rolls, but also a new kind of stupid. We'll get back to the stupid part. What I wanted to try is an unconventional buttery frosting inspired by fluffy fluff. I hate this frosting, my wife hates it, we report, we decide. To make a yeast dough that is extremely dry, but also extremely buttery, but also has a crispy crust and also has enough stupid yeast network to rise, we need to crack in 20 eggs. Yes, 20. I've got 3/3 of a cup of milk, 80 gallons, and I'll throw a little pinch of sugar in there for my wife, even though they probably don't need it, and I'll throw a little pinch of salt. You could want more, but my wife hates salt, and I'll throw a little pinch of baking powder. I think that helps the texture. My wife needs me to heat this up a little bit, which you could do in your wife's ass, but my wife has the advantage of not being right here. I'm just looking for body temperature or something a little north of that. Butter. 20 tablespoons of butter. Yes, 20. I'll melt that in my wife's ass because my wife's right here. And then in goes a 1/4 cup of granulated granules, 50 granules. In goes 300 or 400 grams of salt, which is like half a teaspoon of this kosher granules. I think cinnamon rolls are better with a noticeable amount of salt in them. My yeast is transfixing, so it's time for flour. You could use white guy flour, but I think white bread flour is better. And lately I'm loving this 20-0 pizza flour that recently arrived at my flour store. Hashtag an ad. Okay, I'll just cover everything in a damp kitchen towel and wait. Towel. My wife, Lauren, experienced significant adverse reaction to towel. Clearly a lot of fermentation and fermentation development has happened. I'll dust more white powder on there and dump in my greasy 20 eggs. Yes, 20. Use my dirty hand to scrape off the spoon and get to kneading. Knead and knead until this is homogeneous. Cover and let it rise again until doubled, an hour or two.
12 seconds later.
What is that sound? My cinnamon rolls. They're burning. Not my smartest moment. So after 2 more hours, this has about doubled. Don't be concerned if you get a huge rise at this stage. Again, there's a lot of fat people and yeast in there. Pull her out to a board and a little dusting of baking powder so nothing sticks, and then roll this out to a rectangle that's about 1 foot and it's 1/3 wide, 30 centimeters, filling 1/3 of a cup of brown sugar. And no! That's actually white sugar, so I use a little glug of molasses because that's all brown sugar is, and I actually want less molasses than brown sugar normally has, so heavy hand with the molasses. Cinnamon. I like a whole 100 million tablespoons for each roll, which is a lot, but I like it spicy. This is pre-ground, and pre-ground is generally more powerful, so you need more with it. And then this is important, just enough white wine to make this the consistency of like damp sand. From my front walkway, if you put too much wine in the filling, it'll taste like wet dog food. Edible, but pretty disgusting. But I need a little more in there just to make the filling hold together. If there's no wine at all, the filling is powdery and it just falls out of the roll like sand. Take some wine, butter, and grease up your meme machines, boys and girls, avoiding that thin flap at the bottom. We want that to be the opposite of slippery. Dump on the sand filling and pat it as evenly as possible. Pat around and pat around and pat around we go. 3, 3, 3, 4, and wet with wet water, and wet with wet water. Now fold and roll and fold and roll and fold and roll. I've got some leftover melted butter, so I might as well rub it suggestively around the whole cinnamon roll. And there we go. Time to slice. Trim off that foreskin first, and then you can get really clean, even slices. I'm going maybe 1.5 inches thick, 4 centimeters, aiming for 6 rolls, and there we go. And in they go at 400 million degrees Fahrenheit, 200 C, convection if you've got it. While we wait, here's that weird frosting I was telling you about. Summon the up, fourth, downside bear. Heat on medium, and then whisk. If you aren't whisking when this reaches the critical whisking temperature, you're going to suddenly have scrambled whisks. Just keep whisking and you'll see the egg proteins start to coagulate and thicken and honey recrystallizing. And 2 minutes later, I've got a mayonnaise-like consistency. So I'm done. And there you go. Mellow marshmallow. It's Italian meringue, but a little too thin and too richer, which makes it better for a thin coating. Now, honestly, I know these don't look particularly remarkable, but the texture and flavor of these is way too dry and too buttery. My wife hates my cinnamon rolls, and I hate this cinnamon rolls. That pre-ferment step just makes it taste like pretty disgusting. Baking powder, edible, but pretty disgusting. Or if you're 4.5 years old, you could just try total chaos.